Hello, I'm Peter, the newest member of Digital Foundry, and look, I can't just make any old ordinary video for my first Digital Foundry video. It's a special occasion, and I need to make sure that Richard Ledbetter, head of Digital Foundry, known obviously to his friends like me as Rich, doesn't regret hiring me. So I'm going to make a video about a very special game. Today, we're diving into the performance of the adult content creation platform Vertimate. Built with the Unity game engine, it's a system to make and share 3D rendered adult content based around customizable character models with scripting, its own bespoke plugin system, full fat soft body physics, and of course virtual reality experiences. Contractually, Digital Foundry videos need to say many of those words at some point. We've got them covered now. The platform Vertimate allows you to download and view community content that you can search and filter through to find things like scenes, character looks, plugins, objects, all things that you can be free to download, play, change, combine. For example, here is a scene that lets you load in different character appearances and select pre-made poses and animations for them, among other things. It's called Try On Master and it takes 4.5 minutes to load before you can do anything. And that's the second time after it's cached the textures. The first time it loaded, it took something like 7 minutes. That's a long time to load into something as simple as this. And I did wonder, why did it take that long? Even if I take into account that I have a 5-year-old CPU and memory combo at i9 10850K with 32GB of DDR4 RAM that once would have been rather high-end, but 5 years have passed. Somehow time keeps marching on and I remain entirely unprepared for that to happen. It still took way too long to load something like this up. So I monitored the usage while it loaded, and nothing was being used. CPU wasn't being touched, memory not filling up or doing much at all, hard drive was basically idling, and the GPU was doing nothing but video encoding from the screen recording in the background. So what's going on? It's taking 4.5 minutes while doing nothing at all. Try On Master, more like try my patience. I originally thought it might be my hard drive until I did this test. I don't have a super fast NVMe hard drive, I have a regular SATA connection, but it's barely being touched. So it's not that my machine is decrepit and old, it's just idling. For a frame of reference of the speed you could expect this PC to load things up, it takes 10 to 15 seconds to load from menu into the entire open world of Cyberpunk, plus a couple more if you count the fading into the game world as part of the load time. This machine is no slouch. DDR4 is still really fast. SATA hard drives are still really fast hard drives, and you actually don't need faster ones, but Big Hard Drive wants to sell you more hard drive. So Vertimate, or VAM as it's more often called, is a slow beast of an application. So it's not really making use of your expensive hardware until it's time to do some physics calculations. See, essentially everything in it is physics based. Even just ordinary animations, even just having a character stand around or sit or idle or anything, it's all done through physics. For example, here's a mocap scene or motion capture made by a creator who goes by Cuddle Mocap. So they use some sensors of whatever kind to record their actions and then imported it as an animation for a virtual character to reproduce. It's a very basic scene, and joy of joys, I can actually show this scene as it's nice and tame and she's clothed. She's just sort of standing there, menacingly. But our interest in this scene is that even just for this basic scene, with a character model standing in front of a pot plant and a bench, just the motions of moving the character's body even so slightly has physics calculations attached. Every movement has to test for collisions of the limbs and body with itself, and everything else to make it happen. The arm moves, does it collide with the body? The leg moves, does it collide with the table? Does it hit the floor? And if it does, how should it behave? Because if her arm hits her other arm, it blocks and pushes that arm away. Same with the legs, or body, or fingers, or toes even. And if you turn on high detail physics, there's physics on smaller parts of her face, and even the tongue. This is far beyond the physics you'd have even seen back during the halcyon days of the peak of NVIDIA physics. Remember those days? So many games with cloth or particle physics, or some objects that sometimes exploded out of walls. I mean, they were all mostly one-directional physics relationships, as in, the particles in the liquid would be pushed or knocked around or collide with things, but they themselves did not push or block anything else. Same with cloth. Cloth in games is pushed around and damaged by other things, but itself does not push anything else. Like the skirt and hair here in this scene, they are moved by the body, but do not put force on the body. But her arms and her legs and other objects that might hit each other do put force in each other, which means there's so many more calculations for that. And that's why this simple scene, with one character, just sort of animating a little bit, is running under 200 FPS, despite nothing really going on. Because lots is going on, lots of physics calculations just to get this much. On average, 3 milliseconds in this scene is just physics per frame. Not consistently, it's either nothing or a whole lot more than that, and it's just the most basic scene I could find. One person colliding potentially with one floor. I did have a bit of fun bothering her with the cube though. Bonk. So what happens if there's stuff in the scene besides that one character? Well, here's a scene by a creator called Van Timbo. It's a scene of a woman moving around in front of a mirror. No ray tracing, it's a planar reflection, and she kind of prances around in front of it. I did put more clothes on her. She was a little bare before. Also, there's a clock. Amazing. Doesn't seem to do anything. And look at all the tat they put into this scene. Unnecessary. But this is only slightly more complex than the previous scene. It's still just an animation of a single character, although this time in a room with stuff, none of which is particularly complex. But how does it perform? At the same window size as we were testing last scene, 70 FPS, and if I make it go full screen, I can bring it down to 60. Meanwhile, this basic scene is churning through about 90% of my GPU apparently. What is it doing with all that power? Oh, physics, I suppose. The physics taking now 4 milliseconds more than the previous scene, about 8 milliseconds per frame on its own, and for something like 60 FPS, where the entire frame has to be done in 16.66-ish milliseconds, 8 milliseconds is almost half of that. Perhaps because there's more for this character to collide with. Such a small change, having an extra wall to collide with, made such a massive impact. The rest of the performance change maybe could be due to the fact that these windows have reflections on them for some reason. Low resolution, but yes, there is reflections that you can hardly see unless you know they're there. They're entirely unneeded. So I deleted them and got 3 FPS back. Wow, okay, this graphic optimization is easy. Why does everyone make so many videos on it? I'm basically an expert at it. Okay, yeah, that's bugger all. If I turn off the main reflection too, I get a good chunk of FPS back, up to around 100-ish frames a second, but now it looks like she's just dancing around facing the void, looking into the void. The void looks back. Don't touch the void, are you crazy? Never touch the void. And now back to the very first scene we looked at, Try on Master, after we wait 4.5 minutes for it to load. It's a basic scene with an overly complex menu for what it is, which merely places a single character in a single scene, but after it finally does load, it gives you some interactivity, really enhancing your ability to bother these characters. For example, I can summon this paddle and spank the character, which, okay, I can't show much of that either, but it has a massive stutter the first time you do it, as it loads in some more textures and sounds. It loads in a texture for some red marks on their butt, and makes them make a sound of a sort, which also needs to load in. I can't demonstrate any of that for you. But we can use this scene to showcase a couple of the plugins. So beyond just scenes, there are also a lot of plugins to download. A lot of rather mundane but useful, for lack of a better word, plugins are available. But there are a few plugins that are worth a mention as examples. One of the most common plugins I saw is called Glance, which tries to make the characters look more natural by having them look around at different things in the scene. Their eyes are focusing on different elements on the scene randomly. It also has an option to show where the character is actually looking, which I'm showing here. It's honestly a pretty good plugin. Their eyes kind of dart around to look at different things in the scene so they don't hold unnaturally in one direction, or worse, just stare at you like they're reading from a teleprompter. There's also Naturalis, and while I can't vouch for how successful it is, the intent is to make the soft body physics of the characters more convincing. And it has a calibration phase where the character model T-poses for a while their bits are flung in different directions until it snaps back to where it was before. What does that calibration check for? No idea. Does it make things better? Not sure. But my favourite, because it's the most amusing, is a plugin called Divining Rod, which makes the genitals of a male adjacent character move itself, point towards the nearest relevant receptacle. What a fun, YouTube safe euphemism. Which means that as the lady's secret approaches the gentleman's special gift, it will begin to tilt in the direction of the woman's holy sanctum, aligning them so that when they meet they are connecting properly. I can't show it. Use your imagination. So in this scene, you can change the background from just a plain floor to some outdoor spaces and some interior spaces, or a pass-through mode. And when you change the background scene, it can also have a rather large pause. You can select exterior, interior scenes through these buttons, and as it loads in the new scene, new background, it has to get a whole lot of new models and textures. And wait a minute, this first room is familiar. I know this room. This is the same room background as from the Puzzling Places game on the MetaQuest VR headset, specifically the Dracula's Dinner puzzle. I spent literally hours staring at this room while I was putting the puzzle together, and that's why it looks so familiar to me. It's got the same walls, the same floors, the same tablecloth on it, the same chairs, the same little gong positioned weirdly in front of the fireplace. It's just this one doesn't have Dracula, his victim, and all the food. So where did it come from? Where did this model come from? It came from Sketchfab. It's free to download and licensed in the Creative Commons license, which means that it's free to use with credit. So they converted it for VAM and did, to their credit, do the credit. So I guess that's good. But that's not the way things usually go in dark corners of the internet, is it? Them having the rights to use the background is the exception, not the rule. For example, the second most highly rated scene on the Vertimate hub, Sexy K-pop Dancers, 120 songs, which takes a brisk 1 minute to load, lightning fast, and when it loads up, this is the first thing you see. Look familiar? It's Kaer Morhen. It's from The Witcher 3. They just took the background and put in a K-pop looking woman to dance in it. How thematically nonsensical. And the songs they use are just literal K-pop songs. And so many of them. There's so much content theft here, it's like looking at a YouTube reaction channel. So I was going to make a whole section about how they were only able to get away with stealing so much copyright material because it's on this dark corner of the internet that no one knows about. But then, yes, I remembered all the reaction videos on YouTube, so I guess it's not really particular to VAM. It's just that you don't have to make any excuses in this place because no one cares. I mean, it's not like KDA are going to ever notice that their hit song Pop Stars has shown up here. So let's play that one. Look at this dance. Did they get the choreography by recording me playing the very same song in Beat Saber? And the top rated scene on the Vertimate hub is basically the same type of scene, but just way more complex. And its title is also no exception to that. It's called VAM Produce 69, the second DLC expansion and the rise of the third season. It's like a title from the new releases section on Crunchyroll. It takes 6.5 minutes to load just to the intro. And then it opens up with a menu which freezes when you click on it. And then it shows these mountains which with a hard to read menu over the top of them which asks you to set language because apparently it's in multiple languages. All done with a bunch of text-to-speech voices as you'd expect. And after a bit of mucking about, as it wasn't exactly intuitive, I figured out that I select the scene to play by clicking on them and then clicking Cam Ride. So I just played the first scene and to my amusement the character started out underneath a blanket. And it was like the character was desperately trying to get out from underneath all of that plaid, but it was fighting her. It was so humorous. I get that it's supposed to be like a scantily clad woman under there, although I have switched out the clothes so that I can more comfortably show it here. But watching her battle her way out of a plaid blanket was the absolute highlight of my experience with VAM. It's the best part so far. So that's it. That's what real-time cloth physics was made for. That's why there's no more advanced physics in regular games for the last 10 or so years. It's all gone into that. That's where all the physics ended up. Not that it's good physics. There's not enough gravity and it kind of just like floats in the air for ages. But despite the dodginess of that physics, it's also why it runs at well below 60 FPS sometimes. Outrageous. So yes, it too is filled with copyrighted music. But I can't bring myself to put all that much effort into defending the copyrights of a big company, or a K-pop brand or whatever. There's a bigger problem. The selection of character looks you have available to you. So in edit mode in VAM, you can change the character's appearance either by custom changing some things, lots of sliders, or by just loading in an appearance that you got off the VAM hub, the place to download everything. And there's characters for many different tastes. I can't show most of them, and I don't want to anyway, but there are male characters and female characters and varying shapes and sizes of them. But unfortunately, there are also some reproductions of real people you can download, which is not great. I don't think that it's okay to put an actress, TikToker, or a streamer, or a singer in there. Even an adult film actress, it doesn't matter. It's just not right because none of them know they're there. They definitely didn't consent to it. Their appearance is just being stolen here, and then it can be used for all sorts of things that they're probably not comfortable with. And how many bloody versions of Belle Delphine do we need anyway? It's the same problem I have with like generated deepfake versions of real people, be it image or voice, and here it's certainly no better. And it's maybe worse when you consider that many of those who created these digital simulacrums of real people actually have Patreons, where people give them money in exchange for access to some of these non-consenting interactive nude models. Look, I'm no prude. I might be the creator of the most sexless channel on YouTube, but I'm not that much of a prude. I have no problem with anyone making a bunch of scenarios to act out fantasies that they couldn't have in real life. For example, one creator on VAM is known as Weeboo VR, makes a lot of futanari content. He has fictional characters, giant women with cocks as big as an arm, but they're fictional, so I have no problem with it. That's totally fine. Do what thou wilt if it hurts no one else. But as soon as you're recreating real non-consenting people like Liam Hemsworth and even Laura Bailey, even Toru Honda, then you cross too many lines. Even if most of these don't look anything like the person. Even if I must admit I laughed when I saw a version of Ben Shapiro. I mean, he's awful, but this is still non-consenting. I should take this out of the video, but maybe you deserve to know what a piece of garbage I am. Make up fantastical men and women and scenarios. That's what this system should be for. I have no problem with that. Get pegged to death by a giant woman in virtual reality. Get jerked off by goblins. I don't care. But leave real people out of it. They didn't consent to this, and putting them in there without their knowledge or against their will is repulsive. It's even against the terms of service of VAM. In section 7.5D, you must agree that you have a signed written consent or release for each identifiable person in the user contribution to use their name or likeness. And I'm sure that none of them got Pokemon's signed written consent for this. So it's against their terms of use, but that's not much good if it's not enforced. But I guess no one notices or says anything because who's going to be stupid enough to admit that they've seen any of this to report on it? Oh. Oh, hi. Yeah, Rich, hey. So, what do you think of my fired